Are you?
Doing
Charts here.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Board of Commissioners work session, October 19, 2023. First, we need a motion for the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Harrison. All in favor? Motion passes. Main Street Program Memorandum of Understanding and Bylaws. Staff.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll give a intro here just for the viewers that may be watching, just to have some context about the presentation that Ms. Piner is about to provide to the board. North Carolina Department of Commerce designated Zebulon North Carolina Main Street Community in July. This designation requires the town, either directly or in partnership with a nonprofit organization, administer this Main Street program. The Board of Commissioners subsequently appointed a Main Street Advisory Board to craft both bylaws, those are to guide the function of a new nonprofit, and a memorandum of understanding to establish the responsibilities of that nonprofit in administering the Main Street program in partnership with the town. So you'll hear a presentation that is a culmination of the hard work of that Main Street Advisory Board. And with that, I recognize our Main Street Coordinator, Teresa Piner.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the board. I first want to thank you for having me here this evening, as well as for last Friday night, the ribbon cutting that we had as part of Rock the Block. I was excited. I thought it went well, and it was well attended. So again, thank you. Just a little follow-up. The Main Street Board has been very busy looking at some of the documents that we had to set our foundation. And as part of that, a couple of the documents that we'll be looking at this evening are the Memorandum of Understanding, what we will refer to as the MOU, and the bylaws. They are being recommended by the Main Street Advisory Board. The Main Street Advisory Board, in addition, has been looking at several other documents that you're going to probably be seeing along the way at some time. They've got a lot of other work to do. This is just the beginning. As the manager stated, we have to make these initial steps so that we can file for the nonprofit status that's required by the Main Street designation. The MOU and the bylaws, the MOU, or the Memorandum of Understanding, that describes an outline of an agreement between parties. And in this case, it's two parties. That will be the town and the Main Street Board. And so that will be something that we will have to have an agreement on at some point in time between these two parties, approval by the town board. The bylaws describe the internal operations of the organization, or of the Main Street Board in this case, and are required for submittal of the nonprofit's tax-exempt status to the Secretary of State. Although this will be the internal document for the Main Street Board, they are seeking your recommendations and your comments before they move forward with that actual filing. Development and the goals of the MOU, they're going to be based upon several factors. Development and maintaining a strategic plan to guide the redevelopment. Again, this is kind of a foundation that's set with the Main Street group, having that strategic plan, then out of the strategic plan, developing an action plan. Maintaining and implementing an action plan through that four-point approach. You've heard a lot about the organization, design, talking about economic vitality, and there we keep going through that. And so this is a part of that same process that you'll continue to hear. create a positive image for the downtown that spurs investment. I want to thank you for funding the work that's being done down there right now with the sidewalks. It's very important when you set that foundation of clean streets, of taking pride in what we already have to be able to build upon something larger. If we have to take care of what we have first. And so again, I appreciate that. I think also the board is excited about the facade grant as we're starting to see the changes that are taking place down there and what that facade grant could do. Again, that cannot be done without the town board, and then hopefully us being able to promote, again, one of those 4 points, promote these efforts through to the businesses and the property owners. And to identify tools and resources to enhance downtown economic sustainability. What are the tools and the resources we already have in place? So we have to look at those. And it doesn't have to be, necessarily something hard and fixed, but it can be the tools and resources we have with departments that we have in place, with finances, with studies that we have. It can be with our civic groups and our organizations. It can be with such as ZDAC. They're very active downtown right now. So those are the kinds of things that we have to look and identify all those tools to be able to leverage them. As a part of the MOU, there's going to be responsibilities of both groups. Town responsibilities as well as Main Street responsibilities. We look at this, one of the things that the Main Street Board wanted to do was appoint an ex officio from the town board in some way to the Main Street Board. Now, that would be up to you if you chose to go that route of who that would be. It could be a a town board member. It could be a staff member. It could be someone else. But it's someone that will represent the town board's interest. They would not have voting power, but this would be, again, in the MOU, a responsibility that the Main Street Board would like to see, that you are partnering with them and understanding what they're doing on a regular basis. Again, partner with a nonprofit to meet the Main Street Agreement. The Main Street Agreement deals a lot with talking about trainings, just like we had a training today, as a matter of fact, trainings and ongoing support from the Main Street staff. I think one of the examples was, again, the town board support and attendance of the annual conference that it did last March. Learning about that background and understanding that history, it gives you a knowledge, it gives you a base. And so again, that is partnering and understanding. Providing a semi-annual report to the Main Street Board. More than just kind of what's been happening on a 50,000 foot level, and not just finances, but what do the town boards see where your plans are going to go? What do you see and where would you like to see not only town as a whole go, but how can the downtown plug into that? What are some of the studies that are being promoted and projected for downtown or the surrounding area? Some of the land purchases that are being looked at for the area. Maybe some even projects with DOT, but kind of an overall more detailed report so that we can look at that and understand how, again, collaborative, we can plug in and make sure we're all aware and working toward the same goal. And then partnering in the creation of an economic development plan using Main Street principles. Again, we're doing this today as we did met with the project that Shannon Johnson is doing right now with the town overall. There's going to be a role and a place for the downtown and its part in that plan, although it's not a large part, but to understand its place and the impact the downtown has on the town's overall economic development plan. And in return, there's going to be requirements of the nonprofit and its responsibilities. And some of these are just kind of reversed. Coordinate activities of the downtown. Again, we're going to have to work with these departments, understand what the departments have planned for downtown, look at the nonprofits, look at the civic groups, look at our downtown community. And that involves, again, your civic groups, your downtown property owners, your businesses. Partner with the town to meet requirements of the Main Street Annual Agreement. That is promoting downtown, promoting historic preservation, using those logos, advertising and promoting the town as well as the Main Street program. Again, in return, providing you a detailed annual report of what the plans are from the Main Street Board and partnering in the creation of that economic development plan. Again, for us to be able to provide you the detailed information of what's transpiring downtown, getting that to the right people. In this case, it will be to your contractors so that they can understand what's truly happening downtown so we can have a better plan overall. MOU and other sections that are in this, again, amendment. MOU can be amended in writing between the two parties, in this case by mutual agreement. The MOU that you will receive will be listed currently as a 5-year amendment, 5-year MOU. It can be amended at any time and with 90 days notice. So it doesn't have to wait for 5 years. And then a non-discrimination clause. It's intended to prohibit discrimination and wanted to make sure that that was in there as well.
So the two parties being the town and the Main Street Board?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So some of the questions that we have in looking at the MOU, again, will be the ex officio representative. Non-voting in this case, the town board, town staff member, someone else, but again, someone that's going to represent the town board's interest. Who should pay for the logistic support of the downtown events? The town, Main Street Board. Again, knowing right now as the Main Street Board is currently set up, we would be looking at for donations, but knowing that those funds are going to be limited. How can we expand that? How can we increase that? We'll be looking at grants, and of course, we'll be speaking just a little bit more about an MSD as we talk about bylaws. Who should pay for training? Again, we're talking about conferences and webinars. The next one coming up will be in March. That will be in Goldsboro. So again, it's not as much travel, not as much overnight stay. We won't always be that fortunate. Again, looking at the town and the Main Street Board. And then who will pay for staff support? Executive, the director, office, you have expenses there in maintaining the office. And how will those be looked at? We know that right now we're just getting off the ground, but again, it's a thought that we need to be looking at for the future. And so as you receive the MOU, I would like for you to take a look at it. Once you look at this, when you have questions, and to let me know, are there questions that you have? And don't hesitate to contact me. Be glad to answer any questions that you may have. And there may be something, if I can't answer that, then I'll certainly get the answer for you. Any questions there before we move to the bylaws?
And are you talking about the downtown Main Street Conference is going to be in Goldsboro in March?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, cool.
Yes, ma'am. So we're excited about that being so close. The next document you will be looking at and receiving will be the bylaws. Again, this is an internal document, so it's a little bit different. It will not be something that the town board will have to sign on to or be a part of, but the Main Street group will want your input on that as well as we are setting this foundation. If we're not kind of going along together, if we do not want to get on the wrong foot, we want to be kind of moving forward at the same pace. So the bylaws can change throughout the organization's lifespan, and we expect them to. We are just getting started. We hope that we're going to be growing and expanding. Bylaws that you will be seeing are under consideration are without an MSD district. And their examples with and without an MSD will also be provided. Recommended bylaws that you will be receiving, they are controlling the internal affairs of an organization. They define the group's name, purpose, requirements of a membership, officers, titles, and responsibilities. Again, they are necessary to be filed with the Secretary of State's office, and these are requirements that are needed to do so. And they keep focus, maintain an organization's focus on what they are to their purpose. So this will keep a group focused because we get excited. We had training today, and it's a great thing, and it didn't take long. I was thinking about other things as well, but this is what will be great because our bylaws will help us to stay focused and without kind of shotgunning in too many different directions at one time. Again, bylaws are our focus areas in the bylaws, the purpose and objectives. We'll be discussing officers, elections, and boards, meetings, a regular meeting basis, finances, and indemnification. The bylaws and the purpose. Bylaws are driven by preservation in this case. That is what the Main Street program is about. Very short, Main Street came about, and American Main Street was 1980 with urban flight, leaving the downtown. And so this was created, and North Carolina was one of the first towns that actually joined the American Main Street program. So since that time, we've seen a lot of changes, and it has preserved a lot of buildings that were thought of about being destroyed. Some of the things that we think of today, and now we have the downtown, a lot of the downtown is on a national register. And we often hear that you're on a national register but if you own that building, you can tear it down. That is true. But in July of 23, town of Zebulon was designated as a Main Street community. One of the things with the core being preservation, it is considered I don't want to say no, it is something that you have to go through a lot of steps and show that you have attempted to preserve those historic buildings that are on the National Register before they're taken down. They would like to see that every effort has been taken to show that building cannot be preserved. In most cases, they'll ask that you contact SHPO to set forth a study committee, to have people come out and take a look at them and show that it is not able to be preserved before it is removed. It is something that is more extensive that we have a historic district. At the same time, it is, again, based upon, preservation. So I do want everyone to realize it's great to have be on the National Register. We're fortunate to be designated as a Main Street community, but we do have more ties to it than someone that was in that National Register without that Main Street designation.
Can I ask a question
Yes, ma'am.
about this? So if there is a building owner now whose building just happens to be very much under disrepair, who is fronting the cost for all of these studies and going to SHPO? Is that going to be the building owner or the Main Street program? Like, by being a part of having this Main Street designation, have we put an additional burden somehow on building owners?
Yes, ma'am. It is an additional cost. The cost typically comes twofold. One, in delay of whatever was taking place, whether it was a rehab of that building or whether it was in the, the removal of that building and or the sale to build something else. The additional cost as far as the Main Street Board will be typically staff time. Most of the time, we're going to be working with SHPO and other governmental entities to be able to gather this information, but it can delay and it can be costly. I will say that we have buildings downtown, and we are very thankful they're going through the tax credit process. But it has delayed their openings due to the process they've had to go through with SHPO. So I don't want to say that it doesn't have an impact, financial cost and impact on those businesses. We will also look at the purpose with the bylaws, the four-point approach, and that is looking at, again, our organization, promotion, design, and economic vitality. The officers and elections and boards. This is something that, again, this will be an area we want to look at and focus on, I think, for the town board. Recommending is a minimum of 7 and a maximum of 11 of overall board membership. Ex officios are 3, looking at the past Main Street Board chair, if they so choose, a town representative, as we have mentioned, and a chamber representative. It would not have to be the executive director. It could be a member of the chamber. Again, because we're wanting to keep those lines of communication open. They do a lot of work in and around with our businesses as well as the downtown. And again, they're non-voting. The officers would not be in addition to the 7 to 11. The officers would be made up of that group, that 7 to 11. The chair, vice chair, secretary, treasurer. And in this case, they have recommended an assistant treasurer. I have to commend them, the Main Street Board. There's many of nonprofits that are standalone and are not tied to a governmental agency. They want to be very good stewards of the town's money and are not used to having necessarily a finance officer, knowing that there's going to be those audits that are attached to a governmental entity, and felt that they needed an assistant treasurer to be overseeing things. It's maybe not necessary in this case, but at the same time, as we ramp up and with fundraising and opportunities, it may be a perfect place. So I just wanted to let you know the reason for the assistant treasurer was, again, wanting to be good stewards and making sure that as a nonprofit, they had checks and balances in place. Terms and removal. Initial appointees, they would have staggered first terms, and this would be based on officer appointments. Subsequent appointments would be 2 terms of 3 years. Someone would be able to sit out a year before they are able to be reappointed. And then for removal of officers and ex officio, it would take 2/3 vote of the Main Street Board. Board selections without an MSD. Again, the selections for those board members are kind of broad, and we've talked about some of these in the past. They would strive for diversity among property and business owners and citizens. The representatives, they would look at corporate, business, property owner, and citizens. And talents, look at those again from the 4-point area. Those that have talents in the organization and promotion, economic vitality, and design. This is the criteria that was used to appoint the current board. If the town board chose and felt like at this time they would like to look at selections based upon an MSD. And we took this back to the Main Street Board to review. There are more criteria for the board members. A third of board members would need to be downtown property owners. A third would be downtown business owners. And then the remaining 1/3 would be made up of the following, and because there's a large list, and I'll take you that to the next page, a combination of the following. The remaining third would be downtown residents or abutting residents right next to the Main Street District, a town representative, and where we stated in the past where that representative would be a non-voting ex officio, in this case, as a Main Street District, because you're talking about taxation now, if they would be a voting member. Whoever is on that 1/3 now as an MSD district would be voting. It could be a county representative, it could be a school representative, or a nonprofit civic group or faith representative. But this group now, just say if it was a town board representative, they would be a voting member now, where as an ex officio they would not be, and rightfully so due to taxation. Also, as an MSD, this, of course, as you know, would not be something that the Main Street Board could do. It would just be because this would be something that would be required of the town board to initiate. We could do the study for you and bring back the information, but would not be able to act upon. An example, if you had a non-person board, Main Street Board, you could have 3 property owners, 3 business owners, and then 3 of those that were listed, again, there on the left-hand side, and all would be voting members. Meetings and other monthly meetings. At this time, they would be held at Town Hall, or it does state in the bylaws as otherwise noted. So because there may be a time and a place downtown at some time that they can move. Gift policy would want to be developed. So that's something, again, they want to be able to accept gifts, being a nonprofit, but that policy would need to be developed. Fundraising and sponsorships policy, again, would they want to be able to do that, and that is set up in that nonprofit status, but again, a policy would need to be developed, and we'd be working on that as well. Leading to some of those questions, the length of years and the number of terms of service, again, that can be changed. This is kind of a standard of a 2-year term and 3 years each. That's kind of a standard. Removal from office to 2/3 vote. Board size, a minimum of 7, maximum of 11. Again, that's flexible. Makeup board without an MSD or with an MSD. Again, the bylaws you're going to receive are without an MSD. However, getting feedback whether or not you feel like you would want to go with the MSD standards. Just highlighting again some of those questions that we talked about with the MOU. Again, ex officio representative, who would you want that to be to represent the town? Number and types of organizations, your ex officios. They can be others. We said in this case 3, and we named those. It could be more. That's up to you. As a MOU, because that is agreement between the town and the Main Street Board. Financial responsibility, again, we'll need to be coming up ways to make those, if it's taking more off the town, how we're going to pay for those. So we'll be glad to look at those as well. Again, next steps. Once we adopt the bylaws, we can then elect officers. We haven't been able to elect officers yet because we need those bylaws in place so that we know what those standards are for those people to be elected. Then we will file for the nonprofit status. We can begin a MSD study. to bring that information back to you, whether that's something you choose to move forward with after you receive the information. Again, that is up to this board and not the Main Street Board. Develop internal documents. That will be ongoing. We will plug away at that on a consistent basis. And again, we will be working in 2024, starting the process with a downtown master plan. So I'd be glad to take 20? Oh, okay.
So Mayor, what we ask of the board now is we've given some sample questions as a way to prepare you all for the bylaws and the memorandum of understanding that you're going to receive, but also to help you and start to initiate a conversation to get an idea of where you all are. And so we prompted you with 4 questions here, and we would appreciate feedback from the individual board members on where they are in any of these issues. If they don't feel strongly about a particular issue, they don't need to comment. If they do feel strongly, we would love to hear that feedback. So again, these are sample questions to get you all talking, get you all thinking regarding the bylaws. And with that, we'll take comments and feedback that the board has.
Start with the first sample question. Any comments on the length of years and the number of terms of service?
Has the current board indicated what they would prefer?
This that you see is what is in the bylaws, and this is what they're moving forward with unless they receive information otherwise from the town board.
So two-year terms, and each term
Two.
is 3 years each? That makes sense.
Two terms of 3 years each, I'm sorry.
Okay, 2 terms of 3 years each, okay.
I don't have a comment about the first question, but for the minimum and maximum, I would suggest to at least attempt to do the maximum because we have so many residents and citizens that are interested in taking part and want to be engaged. So I would say go with the 11 so that we can get as many people engaged and involved as possible. I don't know if there's any way to change that, but I would like to see the maximum amount of people on the board so that we can get more citizens involved with what we're doing.
Any other questions, comments?
Mayor, it'd be helpful if we could get some guidance or preferences on the 4th question. If the board is interested in bylaws being set up with the board makeup without a municipal service district or with a municipal service district. Doesn't mean you have to go out tomorrow and create a municipal service district, but if you are interested in creating that, you will need to have board makeup that meets that standard. So some kind of feedback from the board on with setting up the board membership standards without or with an MSD would be helpful.
Commissioner Laux?
I highly recommend we do the MSD because you are going to have to finance this and you do want buy-in from the downtown area, the downtown people, so they can see the impact. And I also like the idea of 11 people so we get maximum involvement.
Commissioner Harrison?
With the MSD.
Commissioner Miles?
I'm clear with both with and
With
maximum.
with the MSD and the maximum?
Yes, sir.
Of 11?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Baxter?
As far as the board size goes, I'd like to see a minimum of 9 and a maximum of 11. And that way, if we do move forward with an MSD, it will meet the criteria. So I agree that there should be a maximum of 11, but I'd like to make sure that we set the minimum of 9.
Like that.
And I would like to get a little bit better of an understanding about what the MSD is going to cover, what the downtown business owners, what their expectations are, and how much the MSD would add to the downtown service district's taxes before we move forward, if possible. Yeah, okay, cool.
That would be probably as part of a study, because there are so many options for boundaries. I would think that we would probably not want to use we would want to include the Main Street boundary, but probably would need that to be larger than the Main Street boundary. And so I think we would probably give some examples of several different boundaries and with different examples as part of that study.
So can you come back with the Main Street boundary and then some different overlays for us to see?
I think so.
Okay, cool.
When they say removal from office, is there a set of guidelines or criteria that says rationale behind?
Yes, a question about the rationale for 2/3 vote.
Just that wanting more than a simple majority.
Well, I think he's asking what would lead to someone being removed.
What would
Is that
lead
what it is?
Yeah.
to that?
Correct.
Well, one of the things, the criteria that was in there originally was that if you missed a certain number of meetings, however, the actual number was taken out. They in the beginning, they were a little concerned that that was too rigid of setting that standard, because in addition to the regular meetings, there are also going to be committees set up that that will be on projects. And so they were a little concerned with getting too rigid with the actual number. So they left that more fluid, but it would be primarily a number and attendance and being able to carry out the duties that as a part of the program.
And to follow up with that, is there some kind of ethics statement?
Yes, we also have a conflict of interest.
Of interest, yeah.
But as far as in the bylaws, there's not an ethics statement in the bylaws themselves.
So should there be one?
And that's a good point. It may be that this is a place where you would like to see that added.
I definitely would like to see that started off in the beginning. We get that on the foundation part of it. Setting up, we can get that.
I think our attorney has a thought.
I didn't hear you.
Eric has some.
Oh.
Yeah, generally speaking, a conflict of interest policy would not be included in the bylaws. It would be a separate document, but it would follow along with the bylaws at the same time they could be adopted. The conflict of interest policy and the ethics is also something that's signed by each one of the members. The bylaws are also adopted by the members, but they're separate. You wouldn't normally have an ethics statement in bylaws. It gives you more flexibility to amend them if you need to later on without having to amend bylaws.
Gotcha. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, thank you. So we're doing those, just to make sure I understand, we're doing those simultaneously. We have the ethic and those coming along, but it's totally separate. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Is everyone good with the MSD?
Just one quick question as well for me. So with the three that we're kind of like 333, we shouldn't have any, will we have a hard time getting the property managers or business to actually get those people involved, you think? Or it'll be pretty much easy to do? If we say we can't get three property owners, say, no, I don't want that responsibility, what do we run into then?
Well, I think with an MSD, you're going to have a larger area than just the downtown Main Street district, and I think you've got a larger pool to pull from, and I think you will not have as much of an issue. I do kind of like Commissioner Baxter's option of having that range in case. And the beginning, while we don't have an MSD, that may give us some fluid area, and then because the Main Street district is smaller, And then we could move to that 11 if we had that flexibility when that MSD actually is in place and go to that 11. That may give us that flexibility there that you're speaking of. I like that.
All right, thank you.
Staff, do you have what you need on that questions, on those
We do.
questions?
We've got another series of questions with the MOU. So again, any comments from anyone in particular? It's going to be hard at this point to put a number on financial support. So if you could just talk to us in principle about who should support, when they should support. So when I say that, I mean like, would you have an expectation that the Main Street program financially support in year 0? Would you have an expectation that the Main Street program be financially supporting some of these services by year 5? So again, just an expectation. We're not looking for percentages. We're not looking for dollar amounts. We're just looking like, where are you in principle as far as who financially supports the town or the Main Street, and when do they support, meaning in the life of the organization?
Commissioner Laus?
Yeah, I think to start off with, the town is going to have to finance it, but I would think within 5 years they could wean off. In other words, 100% year 1, maybe 90% year 2, 75% year 3, et cetera. But I would like to see a budget which is going to be based upon what they're going to try to do. I could sit here and see it a couple thousand. I could see it 100,000.
And I think
depending
it
upon what
does
they
need
wanna
to be
do.
graduated, like you say.
Yeah.
But I don't know that we need to put those percentages in there until we have an idea of what the actual budget is going to be, just for that exact reason. Because if they come back and they say, our budget is $100,000, well, maybe that's not what the town wants to spend to support the program right off the bat. So how long do you think it's going to take to come up with what you need to have budget-wise?
Well, I do think it's going to take us actually getting formally recognized and these documents submitted so that we can have that action plan and develop that budget. So I really think, to be honest, it would take a good year getting us formalized, getting these documents submitted to come up with a solid budget. Right now, it's kind of paper and it's trainings, but to understand what we're going to be doing as far as action plans, I think it's going to take us a year to really know what we're going to be able to formalize ourselves to be out there on the streets doing.
So do we need to set aside X number of dollars for this program then, and then you'll come back with a budget, and that's when we revisit the percentages or how we're going to financially support?
I think for the first this next year, I really think that it's going to be kind of almost like what I've been doing now, taking care of the paperwork and the trainings and that sort of thing, and that we should be able to come back with you with a solid budget within the next 8 months of what we think we will need for promotion, for advertising, for events. I'm hoping that we'll be able to maybe we'll be able to support some of the existing events that are already going on. It may be that we have one that we think that we're ready to take on as a group, but we will be able to work over that and for the next budget year to be able to come together with a solid plan.
I think one thing that will help the board, this is kind of a chicken and egg scenario, but you need some kind of firmament to work from. What we can do is come back and we can categorize and summarize how much you're spending on downtown right now, both on events and staffing.
That would be helpful, because I think that's, until you understand what your budget is, what I'm kind of hearing from you is that you just need support and some blank checks, which makes me a little bit less comfortable than maybe having the numbers and the data before us. So that would be helpful.
Any other questions?
I do like the idea of having a town representative. I do like that idea. And non-voting rep, just kind of somebody to know what's going on.
yes, and when you say town representative, Commissioner, were you speaking of a town board representative?
It could be a board member.
And that would be well received.
Okay.
And when you say representative, an elected official?
Correct.
Okay.
Just somebody that knows what's going on. It's
Yeah.
not to just kind of sit in and kind of like what we're doing now.
Anything more from?
No,
from
what
that?
we're gonna,
Okay.
what we're handing out now is drafts that the Main Street Advisory Board created. This will give you an opportunity, now that you've had the heads up, opportunity to go through with more of a fine tooth comb. Again, just to repeat something that Ms. Piner said, the draft that's in front of you is set up as if it's without an MSD. So if you want an MSD, just make sure you mark that up. We can talk about this further offline at our monthly meetings, which is set up right now. I've got blocks of time on November 1st and 2nd. Based upon your feedback, we'll bring this back to you. But now you have something to mark up with just a draft. But as far as what we need from the board, we've gotten what we need tonight.
And so just so that I'm understanding fully, we'll bring this back at our next work session to talk about, have this before then.
You've asked some really good questions. I think you all are going to want to talk about this at a work session. Conceivably, we could have brought this back to your November regular meeting. I think you all need more information. You're not in a position to vote on it.
I agree. Okay, thank you.
And please don't hesitate to contact me as you read through it and ask questions. I'll be glad to meet with you one-on-one and or on the phone or however that is to try to answer the questions for you.
Thanks for making yourself available, Teresa.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next, lap funding projects, lap funding improvement.
Thank you, Mayor. The board is well aware of this. They discussed this at mini retreat. But for the viewers that are watching, I'll just provide overview and an introduction to Mr. Clark's presentation. So the Board of Commissioners will consider both expanding the scope of the North Arundel widening project to include widening, extensions, and intersection improvements along other adjacent streets, examples being Proctor Street, Pierce's Road, Jones Street, and pursuing a locally assisted programs project grant to offset some of these costs of the expanded project. Staff, while work sessions, we typically don't do this, but given in the interest of time, staff is going to ask board action tonight to approve specifically a resolution to apply for those LAP grants, or to apply for a LAP grant for this expanded project. And with that, I'll recognize Michael Clark.
All right, good afternoon, Mayor, members of the board. As you may recall, back in 2015, we initially did the legwork to submit for a locally administered projects program grant from Campo. This pot of money is a competitive grant, and we're fortunate to get it for the North Arundel project. As you may recall, that project was really about safety and access management in the areas between the off-ramp off of 64 all the way up to the Pierce's Proctor intersection a little bit further north. Due to several constraints, that project unfortunately ended up getting delayed and there was substantial cost overruns. But to remind you, the original project was only $1.2 million. This was based on estimates that were established back in 2016, or sorry, 2015 when it was originally assembled. With that, the Campo grant that was originally awarded for the 2017 project year was going to recognize Campo funding 80% of it, with the town funding the remaining 20%. Having said all that, due to the cost of right-of-way acquisition, easement acquisition, increased cost of labor, materials, and multiple other things, the updated cost estimate is now $10.2 million for that same segment. That is not unusual, and it's actually being reflective across the country in these type of projects. When we really looked at the project, however, we realized it didn't fully address the needs or the full spirit and intent of what we wanted it to do. So Public Works, Planning, as well as a couple other departments came together and really looked at how could this be expanded. Part of this, we brought in some NCDOT ideas that were established as part of the Northeast Area Study, which was a campus study, as well as our transportation plan, and really looked at creating more of that grid network that you've heard me speak about several times to create options. I wish I had the mouse. Let me grab the mouse real quick. Let's see how this works. Perfect. Okay. This way everybody can see it. In addition to the original Arundel project, the revised project was going to include the full construction of Jones Street, not only from where it met Dogwood up to Hendricks, but also further up Jones Street, all the way up to Proctor. The reason for that is it really created that alternative mode of transportation to alleviate some of the traffic that currently occurs on Pierce's. Additionally, Pierce's and Proctor, as we all know, is a perennial traffic concern. While the four-way stops have helped, it doesn't fully address the situation, and there's frequently backups that occur. As part of that, NCDOT, part of their plans, called for that to be a roundabout, and the mouse dies, to have that be a roundabout, which was a good viable option. The green laser. There we go, located right there. The roundabout was submitted as an independent Campo Lat project 2 years ago. However, because of the size and the scale of it, it was the lowest scoring of all the lat projects that year. Given the increasingly competitive nature of these projects, independently it probably wouldn't score well in and of itself. So we looked at including that as part of this project, the improvements on Pierce's going down, and then extending the project further up just to the point where the right-of-way improvements that were going to be associated with Highway 55 and the improvements that were created as part of Popeyes to really complete that setup. Additionally, there would be turn lanes installed onto Pierce's Road to fully kind of build out the section. Upon further investigation as part of our pre-application, we discovered that these two areas are not eligible expenses. Jones Street specifically, located right here, that is a local road. It's not a state road, so it would not be eligible. And while Pierce's Road in this location is a state road, that section of Pierce's Road is what's recognized as a local road in terms of the state road classification. Even though as state maintenance, they're not fully recognizing the volume of traffic that's there. We're working with them separately to try to reclassify that, but at least for this funding cycle, that portion would not be eligible. Having said all of that, the expanded scope with all of that would come to $17.9 million, and of that, the eligible cost would be $13.5. The portion, if we move forward with just the eligible portion, with that same 80-20 split, would recognize Campo funding the $10.8 million, and then the town covering the remaining $2.7 million. That would be only for the eligible expenses. Those two areas that would not be eligible expenses would come to $4.4 million, resulting in a total cost to the town for $7.1 million. We do feel that it's important to include those two segments. They're not eligible in order to really complete the network grid system that we're trying to achieve. Also realizing that when we do start doing these improvements to Arundel, folks are going to be looking for alternative routes. Otherwise, you're going to see substantial backups on Arundel. Having the off-streets constructed first creates that variability of allowing for the disbursement of traffic as opposed to continuing to be concentrated on North Arundel. And with that, staff is recommending approval of Resolution 2409 to authorize staff to submit for the LAP grant funding to Campo with an 80-20 split to fund the North Arundel Avenue roadway project in its expanded scope, finding that it's consistent with the comprehensive transportation plan. I'm available, as well as Chris Ray is available if you have any questions.
Commissioner Baxter?
So I know that, because we've talked about it before, that you're going to be pressing NCDOT to reclassify Pierce's. Is there a way for us to write the LAP grant request so that if that reclassification comes prior to or during the approval process, that then we would be responsible for less and Campo would be responsible for more of that portion?
Not really. Once it's approved, once it's recommended for approval by the TCC and eventually approved by the executive board, it locks it in terms of that grant funding. We could go back after the fact to ask for rescoping based on alternative, but it would then have to go back for reauthorization before the executive board. But it would be written such that it's recognizing the current situation of it being not an eligible expense.
So is there a way for us to word the grant request that we can go back retroactively and ask for reimbursement of those funds if NCDOT reclassifies it prior to it going to the executive committee for approval?
I can look into that. I don't know definitively either
Okay.
way.
Could you look into that
Absolutely,
for
yeah.
us?
Commissioner Miles?
How hard of a process is it to get that area reclassed, Mike? Just if you could break it down,
Yeah,
get a little
there's-
bit better understanding for me.
It's really going to start with the traffic volume counts, so there'd have to be a traffic study done on that particular segment. There's a process known as the AADT study, which it's the average annual daily trips. So you'll see those black cords going across the roadways. Those are measuring vehicle trips. Something like that would have to be done in order for it to be classified. And those do typically take a little bit of time.
And we're on
for
a
them to
deadline,
process.
right?
That's correct. That's going to be the other part is we need to submit this to Campo for consideration by noon on Halloween. Otherwise, we'll have to wait for another funding or year for the funding cycle.
And this project isn't going to get any cheaper.
You know, unfortunately, with the cost of materials, the cost of real estate that keeps going up, it's going to keep making these projects go up. So,
But we've secured all of the easements that we need. Not yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
There's still a couple. We're working with them as part of the development process to see if there's ways that we could acquire those as part of our regular UDO authorization, as opposed to seeking out alternative funds to provide to these developers.
Commissioner Laux?
Proceed with it.
Commissioner Harrison?
We do. And I know it's not getting any cheaper. You know, of course, the 7.1 makes you a little like,
That's a lot.
But-
That's a lot of money.
but I know we do need to proceed, and it's not going to get any cheaper. That number just, it's a big number. But I agree that we do need to proceed.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I agree that we do need to proceed.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Baxter?
Do we then anticipate that we will have to run a bond in order to complete this? I'm assuming that that's going to be what happens. And then, of course, if the bond fails, I'm hoping that it would not, because I feel like the community understands the need for this project. It seems to be at the forefront of what everybody talks about. But if it were to fail, then we would have to go back to Campo and say, sorry, never mind, and then our chances for this to get approved in the future, it's going to have to go through the whole process again?
Do you want to talk about the bond stuff first?
So the answer to the question, if you do move forward and adopt this resolution, yes, absolutely, you will have to have a bond referendum to finance this. If that bond referendum fails, you do have some options. One is to, I'm going to lean heavily on Mike here, one is to go back to Campo and say, we can't do this. Is that correct? Just understand that does have ramifications for future requests. And LAP grants not only apply to roadways, but you utilized a LAP grant for a greenway as well? Yep. So the ramifications of future grants would be impacted for both roadways and greenways. Another option, if the bond referendum were to fail, you could cobble the resources that you have right now. So you would tap into general fund balance. You would dedicate more of your transportation impact fees towards this. That would mean some intersections would not get approved, but you could string together different financial resources. I can't tell you right now if that would be a realistic option, though.
And we could do the old-fashioned way, just borrow the money, right?
I'm inclined to say that's going to be difficult to borrow money for a road project. You can't really use a road as collateral. I would say yes if we were talking about the fire EMS station, but I feel less comfortable saying that associated with a road.
So here, we kind of like putting the cart before the horse, kind of like, are we taking a chance that potentially the citizens would like this bond? We're spending money that we don't really have. We're banking on that. Please.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I think what we're doing now is just applying to make sure Campo would fund this. We're not really hitting the go button per se. We're just, are you going to fund, what is it, 10.8 million of this project?
That's correct, and more so is, like I said, it is a competitive process, and there's anticipated to be quite a few applications that are going to be coming before Campo. There's no guarantee that this project will even get awarded, but this is the first step towards moving forward to make this project a reality.
So, Joe, you mentioned also the ramifications if we didn't get that bond. Can you elaborate on that a little bit, please?
I'm sorry, could you ask it one more time?
You were stating that there would be some ramifications if we didn't get that bond to move forward with the process, and we had to go to Campo and say, no, we don't want to move forward. What would some of those ramifications be?
So the ramifications could be, as an example, when in the future we wanted to apply for a LAP grant, whether it be for a roadway or a greenway, they would look at the past track record with the town of Zebulon and see that we had pulled out of an agreement when other towns were looking for money. So I can foresee that having a negative ramification on future requests. Can't guarantee that, but that would be my expectation.
But right now, we're not talking about spending any money. We're just talking about starting the process.
Correct.
Right, we can say that, but we still got to look at that 7.1 million that's coming from the towns from somewhere.
If we get that far.
All right.
We may not even get that far.
And is there a chance that Campo will come back and say, yeah, but we're going to do 70-30? Or is it, we feel pretty good that they're still going to honor the 80-20?
Well, they do have different percentage ratios that if it comes down to super tight between 2 or 3 projects, that's when they start looking at those percentage ratios. Originally, we were pondering the idea of a different percentage ratio until we realized that those 2 segments were not eligible expenses. With those areas not being eligible expenses and 100% of those costs being assigned to the town, both the Public Works Director and I felt that it would be better usage of taxpayer dollars to request the 80-20 in order to complete the project.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion? Are we ready for a motion?
Sure, I'll put forth the motion. I hereby move to adopt Resolution 2024-09 to authorize staff to submit a LAP grant to request Campo of an 80-20 split to fund the expanded North Arundel Avenue roadway project, finding it is consistent with the Comprehensive Transportation Plan.
Do we need to include that information that you asked for as far as the reclassification of, that doesn't need to be
I
in
don't
there?
think so.
Okay.
I don't think so.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Laux. Discussion? Hearing none. Roll vote. Commissioner Baxter?
In favor.
Commissioner Miles?
Favor.
Commissioner Harrison?
Favor.
Commissioner Laux?
Favor.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Is Angel Tree Awareness Walk, Resolution 2024-08.
Mayor, the board had previously approved this resolution. Unfortunately, that resolution, we included a specific date. That date got rained out, and so they're looking at a rain date. And so we're putting before you a modified version of the resolution that you previously adopted, where we're not naming a date. They just are authorized to use Town Hall for their Angel Prince Awareness Walk. And my mind just went blank on when they're planning on doing that. So
October 28th.
28th.
Yep. So that's when they would plan to do it. But we didn't specify a date in this resolution, just that they have authority to use the Town Hall and Town Hall grounds as you previously authorized.
If we do this without putting a date and there's a conflict with one of our other events, how does that work? Like, say they are pushed back to like when we're gonna do Deck the Halls.
Because we have October 29th in this, they have to come back to us again.
October 28th?
Or
28.
28th. Since we put a date in here, they would have to come back again, and we'd have to decide whether or not we could do both events on the same day, for example.
Can I say something? What would happen normally is that when they ask for a date, they don't just pick a date and say they're going to do it. They come to us to see if it's available.
Okay.
So what happens is we go, that date is not available because we're doing X, Y, and Z. Something's already there. So they work with us to choose their dates.
I just wanted to make sure that there was a process in place so that there wasn't a chance that we would have overlapping events
Yes.
that were unintentional.
Yeah,
Okay.
that would not happen. They would
Okay.
work with Sheila when looking at what's being done, and then they normally check with us to make sure that there's like not something going on even in the lobby when they do stuff like that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, comments?
I'd like to make a motion.
Are we ready for a motion?
I hereby move to adopt Resolution 2024-08 to authorize the use of Town Hall for Angel Prince Awareness Walk.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Baxter. Discussion? Hearing none. Roll vote. Commissioner Laux?
In favor?
Commissioner Harrison?
Favor.
Commissioner Miles?
Favor.
Commissioner Baxter?
In favor.
Motion passes. Thank you.
So that we adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Harrison. All in favor? Meeting adjourned.